Welcome, my friend. Welcome to a story that is not only about a great leader, but about the quiet power of patience, the strength of character, and the courage to stand for what is right even when the cost is high. In this story, you will learn that real change does not always come fast. You will learn that pain does not have to turn into hate, and you will learn that one calm voice can move the world. This is the story of Nelson Mandela. Long before the world knew his name, Nelson Mandela was just a boy growing up in a small village in South Africa. Life around him was simple. People lived close to nature. Traditions were strong. Community mattered. But even as a child, Nelson noticed something strange. Some people had power. Others did not. Some were treated with respect. Others were ignored. He did not fully understand it yet, but he could feel it. As he grew older, the truth became clearer. His country was divided by a system designed to separate people. A system that decided your worth based on your skin color. A system that limited dreams before they could even begin. This system was called apartheid. Apartheid was not just unfair, it was cruel. It controlled where people could live, what jobs they could have, and what education they could receive. It told millions of people that they were less than others. Nelson Mandela could not accept this. He believed deeply in dignity. He believed that every human being deserved respect. And he believed that silence in the face of injustice was not an option. So he chose education. Nelson studied hard. He became a lawyer. He wanted to fight injustice using knowledge and law. He believed that if people could see reason, they would change. At first, his fight was peaceful. Meetings, speeches, organizing communities. He believed in dialogue, but the government did not listen. Peaceful protests were met with violence. Voices were silenced. Leaders were arrested. And the system only grew more brutal. This was a painful realization for Mandela. Sometimes, doing the right thing does not bring quick results. Sometimes, it brings resistance. Still, he did not stop. He joined others who believed that freedom was worth the risk. Together, they challenged the system. Together, they stood up for those who had no voice. This made the government afraid. They watched Mandela closely. They followed him. They waited. Eventually, they arrested him. The trial was unfair. The outcome was already decided. Nelson Mandela was sentenced to life in prison. Life. When the prison doors closed, many believed the fight was over. They thought time would erase his influence. They believed prison would break his spirit. They did not understand Nelson Mandela. Prison life was harsh. The days were long and exhausting. The work was hard. The conditions were cruel. He was treated not as a human, but as a number. Years passed slowly. Inside that small cell, Mandela had a choice. He could let anger consume him. He could allow bitterness to take control. Or he could protect something far more important, his character. He chose discipline. He controlled his emotions. He observed. He reflected. He understood that hate would destroy him before it destroyed his enemies. So instead of feeding anger, he fed his mind. He read whenever he could. He learned. He listened, even to those who guarded him. He learned their language. He learned their fears. He learned how they thought, not to manipulate them, but to understand them. This understanding became his quiet strength. Years turned into decades. Outside the prison walls, the world changed. Inside, Mandela aged. His body grew weaker. But his mind became sharper. His spirit became stronger. He became a leader even behind bars. Other prisoners looked to him for guidance. Guards slowly began to respect him. Not because he demanded respect, but because he lived with dignity. Mandela did not beg for freedom. He prepared for it. He believed that one day, the door would open. And when it did, he wanted to walk out not as a broken man, but as a leader ready to heal a nation. That belief kept him alive. After 27 long years, the impossible happened. Nelson Mandela was released from prison. The world watched as he stepped into freedom. Many expected anger. Many expected revenge. They saw something else. They saw calm. They saw grace. They saw strength without bitterness. And that moment marked the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter that would test his character even more than prison ever did. Because freedom brings power. And power reveals who you truly are. What Mandela did next would shock the world. When Nelson Mandela walked out of prison, the world celebrated. Cameras flashed. Crowds cheered. People saw a free man after 27 long years behind bars. But what most people did not see was the battle happening inside him. Freedom is not as simple as it looks. Mandela had lost his youth in prison. He had missed time with family. He had watched the world move forward while his own life stood still. Pain like that does not disappear just because prison doors open. He carried that pain quietly. Many expected him to speak with anger. Many thought he would demand revenge. After all, he had every reason to be bitter. Anyone in his place would have been. But Mandela understood something important. Anger would give his enemies one last victory. Hate would keep him in prison even outside the cell. So, he made a choice. He chose forgiveness. This was not an easy choice. It was not a soft choice. It was one of the hardest decisions a human being can make. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting pain. It means refusing to let pain control your future. South Africa at that time was standing on a dangerous edge. Decades of injustice had built deep wounds. Violence was close. Fear was everywhere. The country could easily fall into chaos. Mandela knew this. He knew that his words and actions would shape the future. Every sentence mattered. Every decision carried weight. He could either guide the nation toward healing or push it toward destruction. So, he spoke carefully. He talked about unity. He talked about reconciliation. He talked about building a future together. Many people were confused. Some were angry. Some felt betrayed. They asked how he could forgive those who had caused so much suffering. Mandela listened to them. He did not ignore their pain. He did not tell them they were wrong. He acknowledged the hurt and reminded them of a simple truth. A future built on revenge would only create new pain. True freedom, he believed, was not about changing who holds power. It was about changing how power is used. As the country prepared for its first democratic elections, tension filled the air. People feared violence. They feared that years of anger would explode all at once. Mandela stayed calm. He met with former enemies. He sat at tables where hatred once lived. He shook hands that once signed orders against him. This shocked the world. Some saw weakness. Others saw wisdom. History would later prove which one was true. When Nelson Mandela became president of South Africa, he did not rule like a man seeking revenge. He ruled like a man carrying responsibility for an entire nation's future. He understood that leadership is not about power. It is about service. Instead of focusing on punishment, he focused on healing. He supported truth and reconciliation. He wanted people to tell their stories, to face the past honestly, and to move forward together. This approach was not perfect. Healing never is. But it prevented something far worse. Mandela showed that justice does not always mean destruction. Sometimes, justice means understanding. He believed that people can change, that systems can be rebuilt, that dignity can be restored without violence. These beliefs were tested again and again. There were moments when things almost fell apart. When anger returned, when old wounds reopened. Mandela did not pretend these moments did not exist. He faced them directly. He spoke to the nation often. Not with complicated language, not with empty promises. He spoke like a human being speaking to other human beings. He reminded them that fear is powerful, but hope is stronger. Behind the scenes, Mandela worked tirelessly. He built bridges. He listened more than he spoke. He respected even those who disagreed with him. This earned him something rare: trust. Trust does not come from shouting the loudest. It comes from consistency, from integrity, from showing the same character in public and private. Mandela never forgot where he came from. He never allowed power to separate him from people. He lived simply. He acted humbly. He treated everyone with respect. This humility made his leadership even stronger. He showed the world that you do not need to dominate to lead. You do not need to humiliate others to rise. True strength lifts others instead of pushing them down. As president, Mandela focused strongly on education. He believed that education was the key to long-term freedom. Laws can change quickly, but minds take time. He invested in the future generation. He spoke often about responsibility. He reminded young people that freedom is not just about rights, but about choices. Freedom without responsibility, he believed, leads to chaos. Mandela also knew when to step aside. After one term as president, he chose not to cling to power. This decision surprised many. Leaders often struggle to let go. Mandela saw leadership differently. He believed leadership includes knowing when your role is complete. He trusted others to continue the work. He believed that no individual should be bigger than the system. This decision strengthened democracy even more. After leaving office, Mandela did not disappear. He continued to speak for peace, justice, and human dignity. He became a global symbol, but he remained grounded. People around the world admired him, but Mandela never wanted to be worshipped. He wanted his story to teach lessons, not create idols. He often said he was not special, that he was simply a man who made choices. Difficult choices, patient choices, and that is where his true power lies. Mandela's life teaches us that waiting does not mean weakness. That patience can be revolutionary, that calm can defeat chaos. He showed that character matters more than circumstance. That suffering does not have to harden you, that forgiveness can be a form of strength. This story is not just history, it is a mirror. You may not face prison walls, but you face moments of unfairness. Moments where anger feels justified, moments where revenge feels tempting. Mandela's life asks a simple but difficult question. What kind of person do you choose to be when you have power over your response? The journey is not over yet. There is still more to learn from this story. More lessons about leadership, humanity, and inner freedom. And that comes next. As the years passed, Nelson Mandela became more than a former president. He became a symbol. But symbols can be dangerous if people forget the human story behind them. Mandela never wanted people to see him as perfect. He wanted them to understand the struggle. He often reminded the world that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is acting despite fear, and patience is not doing nothing. Patience is choosing the right moment. Behind Mandela's calm smile was a lifetime of discipline. He controlled his emotions carefully. Not because he did not feel anger or sadness, but because he understood their power. Emotions can lead, or they can destroy. Mandela chose to lead them. Many people asked him how he survived prison without becoming bitter. His answer was simple. He said he decided early that prison would not change who he was inside. He could not control the walls. He could not control the guards. But he could control his mind. This lesson is quiet but powerful. You may not control your situation, but you always control your response. Mandela used time as a teacher. While others counted days, he studied people. He watched how fear shaped behavior. He noticed how power changes people when it is unchecked. He learned that oppression does not only damage the oppressed, it also damages the oppressor. It narrows their thinking. It hardens their hearts. Understanding this helped him forgive. Forgiveness, for Mandela, was not emotional. It was strategic and moral. He knew that hatred would poison the future of South Africa. If the country wanted peace, someone had to break the cycle. He chose to be that person. This decision required immense inner strength. Forgiving does not erase injustice. It demands courage to move forward without carrying poison in your heart. Mandela also understood the danger of pride. After becoming a global icon, he could have easily lost touch with reality. Many leaders do. But he stayed grounded. He listened more than he spoke. He asked questions. He learned from younger voices. He believed leadership is not about having all the answers. It is about creating space for others to grow. Can choose patience when anger rises. You can choose listening instead of shouting. You can choose dignity even when treated unfairly. These choices may not bring immediate reward, but they shape the kind of world we live in. Mandela once said that after climbing a great hill, one finds there are many more hills to climb. He did not believe the journey ever truly ends. Growth is continuous, freedom is ongoing, responsibility never disappears. His life encourages us not to wait for perfect conditions to act with integrity. It asks us to practice it now, in small ways, in how we speak, in how we listen, in how we respond to conflict. The world may not notice immediately, but character compounds over time. Mandela's legacy is not just in laws changed or elections won. It is in the example he left behind. An example that says patience can be revolutionary, that forgiveness can be strategic, that humility can be powerful. There is still more to learn from this journey. More lessons about humanity, struggle, and hope. As Nelson Mandela grew older, the world slowly began to see something rare. A leader who did not chase power, a man who did not cling to the spotlight. Someone who understood that legacy is not built by holding on, but by letting go at the right time. Mandela stepped away from leadership, but leadership never stepped away from him. People still looked to him for guidance, not because he demanded it, but because his life had become a lesson. His presence reminded people that leadership can be gentle and still strong. He often spoke about responsibility. He believed freedom is fragile, that it must be protected not just by laws, but by values. He worried that people might forget the cost of freedom once they begin to enjoy it. He warned against comfort. Comfort, he believed, can make people careless. When things improve, people sometimes stop paying attention. They forget history. They stop listening. Mandela wanted the next generation to understand that freedom must be renewed every day through actions. He spoke especially to young people. He told them that the future was in their hands, that education was their strongest weapon, that learning gives you choices, and choices shape destiny. Mandela believed education does more than create careers. It creates character. It teaches patience. It builds understanding. It opens minds. He encouraged young people not to hate, even when they felt angry. He told them anger is easy, discipline is hard, and only discipline creates lasting change. This message was not always popular. Some people wanted faster results. Some wanted stronger reactions. Some believed Mandela was too soft. But Mandela never confused softness with weakness. He knew strength that comes from control lasts longer than strength that comes from force. Throughout his later years, Mandela spent time reflecting. He spoke openly about the loneliness of leadership, about the weight of decisions, about the pain of mistakes. He admitted that leadership requires sacrifice. You miss moments, you disappoint people, you carry blame even when you try your best. This honesty made his story human. Mandela did not present himself as a hero above others. He presented himself as someone who tried, failed, learned, and kept going. He often said that he was not a saint, that he had doubts, that he struggled with fear. But he learned to move forward despite those feelings. This is an important lesson. Courage does not mean fear disappears. It means fear no longer controls your choices. Mandela also believed deeply in dialogue. He believed that talking, even with those you disagree with, is essential. Silence creates distance. Conversation creates understanding. He encouraged people to listen, not just wait for their turn to speak. Listening, he believed, was one of the most powerful leadership skills. In a world full of noise, Mandela's calm voice stood out. He did not speak often, but when he did, people leaned in. His words were simple, but they carried weight. He avoided complicated language. He spoke so everyone could understand. He wanted his message to reach not just educated elites, but everyday people. This simplicity made his impact wider. Mandela's health slowly declined with age. His body weakened, but his spirit remained strong. Even when he could no longer speak publicly, his presence still inspired. People did not gather to hear his words. They gathered to remember his example. His life showed that leadership does not end with a position. It continues through influence. Influence grows from integrity. Mandela also understood forgiveness as an ongoing process. It was not a single moment. It was a daily choice. There were still reminders of the past, still memories of pain, still moments when injustice resurfaced. But Mandela remained consistent. He refused to allow the past to define the future. This consistency built trust over time. Trust does not come from perfection. It comes from reliability. From acting according to values again and again. Mandela's values were clear: respect, dignity, patience, responsibility. These were not just words. They were actions. He treated cleaners and presidents with the same respect. He listened to criticism without anger. He accepted praise without arrogance. This balance is rare. As the years passed, Mandela became less active publicly, but his story continued to travel. It reached people in different countries, cultures, and struggles. People facing injustice saw hope. People facing conflict saw another way. People facing anger saw an example of restraint. Mandela's life crossed boundaries because it spoke to something universal: the human struggle between fear and courage, between anger and patience, between ego and humility. His story reminds us that greatness is not about being loud. It is about being steady. It teaches us that the strongest people are often the calmest. That true confidence does not need to prove itself. Mandela also showed that time can be an ally. When used wisely, time allows understanding to grow. It allows wounds to heal. It allows perspective to develop. Rushing change can break things. Patient change builds foundations. This lesson is especially important today. Many people want instant results, instant success, instant justice. Mandela's life asks us to slow down, to think long-term, to act with purpose, to choose character over reaction. He believed that history rewards those who endure with integrity. As his life moved closer to its end, Mandela expressed gratitude more than pride. Gratitude for the people who supported him, gratitude for the chance to serve, gratitude for the opportunity to contribute. He did not measure his life by achievements alone. He measured it by impact. And that impact continues. Even now, his story challenges us. It asks uncomfortable questions. How do we treat people who disagree with us? How do we respond to injustice? How do we use power, even small power? Mandela's life suggests answers. With patience, with dignity, with humanity. There is still one final part of this journey. One final reflection on what Nelson Mandela's life means for us today. As Nelson Mandela's life came to a close, the world did not just remember a leader. It remembered a lesson written not in speeches, but in choices made over a lifetime. Mandela never claimed to be extraordinary. He often said he was an ordinary man placed in extraordinary circumstances. What made him different was not perfection, but persistence. He kept choosing character. Even in moments when anger would have been easier, he chose restraint. When bitterness would have been understandable, he chose understanding. When silence would have been safer, he chose truth. These choices shaped his legacy. Mandela showed us that life will test you. Not once, but again and again. The tests will not always be fair. The pain will not always make sense, and the results will not always come quickly. But who you become during those moments matters more than the moment itself. His story teaches us that waiting is not wasted time if you are growing. That stillness can be powerful if you are learning. That preparation often happens in quiet places. Mandela prepared in prison. He prepared in reflection. He prepared in patience. When the moment arrived, he was ready. Many people believe leadership is about control. Mandela showed it is about responsibility. That it is about carrying the weight of others' hopes carefully. He did not seek applause. He sought stability. He did not seek victory over people. He sought peace between them. This mindset saved a nation. But Mandela's story is not just for presidents or activists. It is for anyone trying to live with integrity in a difficult world. It is for the student who feels unseen, for the worker who feels treated unfairly, for the person who carries anger quietly. Mandela's life says this: you are not powerless. You always have power over your response. You may not control the system. You may not control others, but you control how you show up. That control shapes your future. Mandela understood that small actions build big character. How you speak when you are tired, how you listen when you disagree, how you treat people who cannot benefit you. These moments define you. He believed dignity is not something given by others. It is something you practice daily, even when no one is watching. This belief kept him strong. Mandela also teaches us that forgiveness is not weakness. It is one of the hardest strengths. It requires confidence, patience, and vision. Forgiveness does not mean accepting injustice. It means refusing to let injustice control your heart. This distinction is important. Many people fear forgiveness because they confuse it with surrender. Mandela showed that forgiveness can be an act of leadership. By forgiving, he took control of the future. His life also reminds us that growth never ends. Even at the height of his influence, Mandela remained a student. He learned from younger generations. He listened to criticism. He admitted mistakes. This humility protected him. Ego limits growth. Humility expands it. Mandela chose expansion. As time passed, his physical presence faded, but his ideas remained strong. People across cultures continued to learn from his example. Not because he was perfect, but because he was consistent. Consistency builds trust. Trust builds influence. Influence builds change. Mandela's change was slow, deep, and lasting. He did not promise a perfect world. He promised effort. He promised responsibility. He promised hope grounded in action. That is why his story still matters. Today, the world feels fast, angry, divided. People want instant answers, quick victories, clear enemies. Mandela's life offers another way. Slow down. Listen carefully. Choose dignity. Not because it is easy, but because it works. He reminds us that strength does not need to shout, that confidence does not need to insult, that courage does not need to hate. These lessons are timeless. You do not need to wait for a big moment to apply them. You can practice them now, in conversations, in disagreements, in moments of frustration. Each choice adds up. Mandela once said that freedom is not just throwing off chains, but living in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. This idea challenges us. It asks us to think beyond ourselves, to consider impact, to act with awareness. True freedom, Mandela believed, is shared. As this story ends, remember this: Nelson Mandela was not born a legend. He became one through discipline, patience, and moral courage. His greatness was built slowly, one decision at a time, and that means his lessons are accessible. You do not need fame to live with integrity. You do not need power to lead by example. You do not need perfection to make a difference. You only need intention. Let this story stay with you. not as history, but as guidance. Let it remind you that even in difficult circumstances, you can choose who you become. And if this journey inspired you, if stories like this help you grow, think, and learn in simple English, subscribe and walk this journey with us, one powerful story at a time.